Everyone, I am really excited about this episode because this dynamic duo brings both farming and floristry together in the most wonderful place. Welcome, Daniel and Leandra, to the Flower Podcast.
Hi.
How's it?
We're so excited to be here. This is an unbelievable opportunity.
Well, I am excited as well because what you guys do is really special and unique, and I can't wait to hear y'all's story. So, how did you guys find your way into flowers? I don't know if you guys found it together or they brought you together or how that works. So, let me know.
So I'm going to start. And first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say I have this flower here. This is our talking flower. Okay. I tend to cut him off sometimes. So we're going to pass this back and forth. So when you see us doing that, that's what's going on. Okay.
Okay, great. I love it.
It keeps me in check.
Okay.
So flowers was honestly, it was something that just really happened that neither of us ever expected. I started, first of all, we're both born and raised on Oahu. I'm originally from Waimanalo, the town that we have our farm in right now, but just a couple blocks down the road. And it was 10 years ago that I got the opportunity to get this property. And it's a 1 acre property. It was kind of a family friend, and it had been pretty much dilapidated for like 7 years. It was uninhabited. So the whole place was covered in vines. You couldn't drive up the driveway. You had to kind of like hack your way up. And I was not with Daniel at the time. I was by myself. And I took on this opportunity, and I just had the intention actually of farming vegetables. It is Hawaii State agriculture land. So we had to do something agriculturally on it. But the lady that I had purchased the property from, she used to do flowers. She grew tropical flowers, and she would do a few arrangements here and there for local, I think it was like restaurants mostly. And so there was a lot of tropicals that was on the property already. So I honestly wasn't interested in it at first. I started clearing land and I started doing some vegetables for farmers markets. And then there was so much as I kept uncovering everything. Because they're established in the ground, they reemerged as I kind of gave them light and gave them space to grow again. And I started doing some wholesale cut flowers just to florists, and I had absolutely no interest in floral design whatsoever. Like, I just didn't want anything to do with it. I liked the farming aspect of it. I just wanted to sell to the florists. And that's what I did for a couple of years. It wasn't by any means a full-time business. It was like a side thing, just on the property to utilize the land. And then we got together. It's been 6 years now. I'll let him kind of give his intro too, but he was the one that kind of brought the creativity to it. So he would come in and say like, well, we're selling some tropical flowers, but he's very artistic. Daniel's the artistic one of us. I'm the business minded. So he started putting together some small bouquets and arrangements, and then it kind
Give
of
me this
okay,
thing.
take it over.
Well, wait, before
me again.
it's okay. This is going to be fun. So when you say you started selling flowers to florists, were these flowers like, I'm just going to dahlias and zinnias, or were they the tropical flowers that were coming up as you liberated them?
Correct. Yeah, it was nothing that I had planted here. It was stuff that was already established.
Okay, great. All right, Daniel.
Okay. So the real story is I got lassoed in here. I was actually going to school to become a doctor. That was my end goal. And she just roped me in with her sweetness. And I've always been involved with plants and nature. I love being outside. So it kind of presented an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. And so one day I just decided, after we talked about it a few times, is try to sell some bouquets to some shops. And then from there, we went into the farmer's market, and then we got approached by a few people to do flowers for them. And it just kind of grew and rolled and snowballed. And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
In a nutshell.
Wow. In a nutshell. So describe your business as it is today.
You want to take that?
So our business today is we are considered a farmer florist. So we have a 1 acre property, which is not a lot, honestly, considering like most farmers. In Waimanalo, we're in a very tropical climate. It is very condensed, very concentrated. We have a lot planted out, and we just grow for our own use now. For weddings and events, we have an online shop, so we deliver directly to, birthdays, anniversary arrangements, just to the local community, but mostly weddings and events. And we sell a little bit here and there to other florists and wholesalers when we have an abundance left over. But our goal is really just to grow for us and for our own self-sufficiency right now.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of curious. I know the photographs I've seen and videos I've seen, you guys are packed in there. I mean, you have a lot on that acre. How many different types of flowers are you growing?
This is you.
Oh, I lost count, actually. I would say we have something around 70 varieties, somewhere around there, 50 to 70. Yeah, the ballpark number. There's definitely certain flowers that we gravitate to, like the beehive, which is in our logo. This is kind of what we like to use in almost everything as much as we can. And also the torch ginger. Those are probably the two different species of ginger that we really like. But yeah, we have quite a few, and I'm still aiming on getting some more. At this point, I'm kind of boiling it down to a few different varieties that I would like to grow more of, and then just have a few specialty stuff that comes up, in less abundance throughout the year.
Sure. Now, I'm glad you just said that last bit. I'm curious, what are the seasons like on this? When you're on the islands and you kind of have the same season, I mean, the same weather, is it just wet and dry, but same temperatures for the most part? Or I don't even know what the fluctuation is there on that. This is how ignorant I am. I need to get to Hawaii is what this boils down to. So
it's beach weather almost all year round. But no, there's definitely a season for a lot of the flowers. Especially when you have small clumps of them, they're going to be very seasonal. You'll get they'll bloom all out. Certain varieties will just bloom in 1 month. They'll just throw all their flowers. So it can be kind of hard to deal with, because instead of this gradual blooming stage for, or maybe over 2 months or 3, which would be great, you'll have 50 flowers to deal with in a week. And you're like, oh my God, I don't have enough business to use all these, so we have to come up with creative ways to utilize them.
Sure.
But generally with the tropicals, they all start coming up in spring and summer, and that has also been something that I've been really attacking lately. Probably after the first year, I realized this, all these flowers come up at the same time. I need to somehow spread it out throughout the year. So I started looking into different varieties that come up at different times. And that's really helped us out to keep us going with the tropicals throughout the year. Yeah.
So what variety? I'm curious now you say that. What are you using to extend your season? What variety? Is it the same beehive gingers, but different varieties or cultivars, or is it?
Yeah, exactly. Different cultivars. So we have about 6 or 7 different beehive gingers, different species. And so we chose them, not only on what they look like, but when they come up, just to kind of keep us going. So this is Zingiber spectabilis is the scientific name. And this comes up first. And then after this one, we get another variety with slightly different color, so we're kind of, it's a give and take a little, so we might not get the color that we want all year, but we'll still have the beehives to use for a good portion of the year. So yeah, we'll have different species of this beehive that comes up. Probably about 8 months out of the year. So we do have 4 months that we won't be able to use them.
Wow, that's impressive. That's an impressive extension of season there.
Yeah.
That's cool. So then, as far as weddings, do you only take weddings and business like that floristry business during your peak season, or do you do business year round and then source flowers from different places?
Yeah, so the wedding season here in Hawaii is definitely year round. It is still seasonal to an extent, but I don't think not as seasonal as what I think it is in certain places on the mainland. Our busy season here is usually like spring, it starts picking up, summer for sure, and then actually autumn. So August, September, October, November gets really busy, mainly because it gets a little bit less hot and it's not
Hmm.
like the high summer season. But we work with other farms on other islands too. So proteas grow really in abundance on Maui, up in the Kula area of Maui. So we work with a farm there, and that's going off in the winter season. So usually around like September. Like right now, we're not getting any proteas from them. They just dwindled off in September. We should start getting some from them again. So when our tropicals here start going down, we start getting an influx from the farms on Maui. So that kind of helps keep us year round being able to produce or supply something for all of our events.
Well, that's interesting. So, as far as transportation goes, how is that expensive to fly things over from other islands, or does everybody just
It's
kind of play well together and it works out?
Yeah, it's not too bad. We get it FedEx
Okay,
overnight. And yeah,
just
it's
like
not too
anywhere,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah. And the
Cool.
tropicals are hardy as long as they're packed well. We've been really lucky. We've never had an issue. Obviously, we have a harder time getting your non-tropicals from the mainland than we do within island.
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting question too. But before we get to that, I'm curious as far as other farms. I mean, obviously, you try to use your product first. How many other farms do you work with?
So locally on island, we work with one, two, three, four or five,
Yeah.
4 or 5 on island locally that just kind of produce tropicals similar to what we grow here. So heliconias and gingers, they just have maybe different varieties than what we have here, or they have more of an abundance when we don't have enough on our farm. And then we work with steadily, we work with 2 farms on outer islands. One is like Greenpoint Nursery, which I know you guys have talked with before. On the Big
Hmm.
Island, we get our anthuriums and our orchids from them regularly. And then another small farm on Maui for all of our proteas. And then we have kind of like maybe 5 other farms in our roster that are smaller. They're not as reliable, and it's just kind of here and there. We get some things from them too.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure it's just filling in and things like that. One of the things I thought about too is orchids. I mean, orchids have their seasons. Do you guys grow a lot
Yeah.
of orchids, or are those things you ship in like from Greenpoint or from other people?
We ship in most of our orchids. Sometimes it's actually cheaper to buy the plant that's blooming than to buy the cut flower. So there were like times, certain weddings where we're looking for certain colors, and I like plants, and I don't have an orchid nursery yet, but I I know how to grow them, and I plan on doing that. But with orchids, you can force them to bloom at different times of the year, so you can control their when they bloom to a certain extent. Um, yeah, maybe next year I'll be ready for production in orchids, but
You need the
I would
space.
I would say yeah, we don't have the space. I have a bunch. I like to work on wood, and part of the nursery is being taken over by my some of my
Yeah.
wood. But yeah, I have some Phalaenopsis, some Oncidiums. It's just some of the varieties that we use and that we know people also like.
Sure. Well, and I guess too, if you're buying plants, that gives you the opportunity to add to your collection, and maybe they rebloom for you. I mean, who knows?
Mhm.
So that would be great. Well, you brought up the idea of sourcing flowers from the mainland. How does that work for you guys? And I mean, are there traditional wholesale houses you work with? I know that's kind of a silly question, maybe, but they're on the island, or do you have to just ship everything over?
So we there are two main wholesalers on the island. One is, you might have heard of them, Watanabe Floral. They bring a lot of stuff in locally. And then there's a couple other smaller ones, but there's really just two on island. But you have to order everything through them. They have a small walk-in cooler where basically I think what they do is they get their orders from the florists and their customers, and they just bring in a little bit extra to push to their floor. So anything that we want for any wedding or event, we really have to order in. We do work with Mench sometimes too, and that gets shipped over Hawaiian Air cargo. So that comes the same day, which is great. But then going down to cargo and takes a lot of time picking it up, and you have to wait for quarantine over here. It has to go through quarantine, which can be just kind of a pain sometimes. So it is frustrating for sure, importing flowers, and especially since you never really know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
because
there's
a big risk. There was one time where this is a long time ago when we first started, and we were kind of saying yes to everything, which we've learned not to do. But it was a very sunflower heavy wedding, and it was just an aesthetic that wasn't really our vibe, and we kind of felt it from the beginning, but we just did it anyways. We ordered all of these sunflowers in from Mench, and I think it was like, I don't know, it was a lot. It was like 100 sunflowers or something, and they all came in damaged, all of them. And it was like a few days before the wedding, and we're sitting here, we're like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Like, this bride, all she wants is sunflowers. That's the main flower for everything. And they're not locally grown here. And fortunately, it was in summertime when sunflowers were blooming and they were in season. And we spent like 2 days going around to all the stores locally, trying to like source sunflowers from like Whole Foods, anywhere that had them, just getting anything that we could to like make it happen. And stuff like happens a lot here, and it's can be really, really challenging. We don't have a flower market here that we can just go and choose from. So we can't see the product until it comes in, and that's really challenging for us here. We went on a couple trips to the mainland, go through LA or in San Francisco, I think it was, and we went and checked out the flower market. And to us, we're walking around and we're just like, this is like a dream to go around and actually pick what you want and see all the color palettes. And it sounds like a dream. But of course, grass is always greener. Just what it is.
I know, because we're just thinking, gosh, you're just surrounded by stuff. You think you would just have all these things that you would want to make design with. But then, of course, when your clients maybe want garden roses or sunflowers or things like that. Now, do you grow anything at all that's non-tropical on your property?
At the moment, no, not really. I am starting to. It's kind of like my little side project, doing some dahlias. And it is a complete experiment. It is make some beds, throw them in there, see what happens. Last year was a complete fail. I did it in mainly all compost, which I learned is a big no-no for dahlias. Nothing bloomed at all. So this year I finally have some, which I'm really excited about. There are growers here that do grow non-tropicals, but it's limited. So dahlias, zinnias, some snapdragons, gloriosas, and then some fillers like you can get Dara, Queen's Anne's lace, some cosmos. So more like your farm flowers. There's on the big island, the island of Hawaii, where it's cooler, there are some people who successfully grow roses. I know a few garden roses. Dahlia is doing really well. Ranunculus do good over there, even some places in Maui, but in our climate, it's not. So I'm just growing a few just kind of for us. And if it works, great, but not putting a whole ton of energy into it.
So with all of these amazing plants and the diversity that you guys have, and then the opportunity to source from all these other people, how does that work when you're dealing with wedding clients? Because, a lot of times they have a very specific mood or mood boards or color palettes or things they want to work with, and nature doesn't always lend itself to that. So I mean, do you have a lot of just people just trusting what you do, or is it because that's awesome if that's the case?
I'm gonna actually hand this over to Leandra. I just wanted to say, one thing, but no, she can just suck it. That's fine.
I think um, you hit the nail on the head right there, Scott. What we have learned and what we've done with our clients is to really make them trust us. We do not promise anything specifically.
Okay.
We might lose some clients for that. That's just the reality of it. But we're very open and honest with everybody from the beginning that we work. I deliver a mood board to every one of our clients, but it is just that it mood board. It creates the overall vibe, the aesthetic of the whole wedding, not specific any flowers. So color palettes we will deliver absolutely, and the overall feel, but we never promise specific flowers. And I just make it really, really clear to all of our clients that I will take note of everything that they really want. A bride really wants garden roses, try my best, but there's a chance that it might not happen. And I think mostly, for our clients, we get a lot of our clients from social media. And I think that it speaks to us and our style working within the land and what's available and what's in season, because that is what we do. So we found that we've kind of like attracted the client for the most part that wants that from the beginning. They come to us saying, we love that you work with locally grown materials, that you work with things in season, and we trust you. Like, I want this specifically and I love it, but I trust you ultimately. So we've kind of tailored it, and so far, fingers crossed, we've been really lucky. We have had no bridezillas, but I'm sure it'll come one day.
Well, you just think that so many times it's in their best interests to let you pick the most fabulous flowers that are available in season, and you don't know what. It's hard to know, especially because how far in advance do you book weddings usually?
So we say like 6 to 9 months out is our ideal. If it's a really big wedding, for sure we'll take it earlier than that because we need to plan. But our standard, we say 6 to 9 months out. And yes, same thing. I just let them know, like they want proteas and it's the middle of summer. And I say, chances are that's not going to happen. It's going to be the end of the season. If I can get them, great. But we work with what's in season. We have gotten stuff from wholesalers before that come from, say, like South Africa, other parts of the world, which usually are fine. But sometimes, the quality is just not as good as what we get locally. So we would rather just work with what Mother Nature gives us to the most part. I mean, obviously there's a give and take for that, but that's what we kind of try to do.
Sure. Well, I'm really kind of interested. Tropicals for a lot of people, I don't know why. Some areas of the country, obviously they embrace them. Some areas of the country, like the town I'm in, I don't get a lot of tropical activity, which kind of makes me sad because I came from a market that we did a lot of tropicals. And I think sometimes, I don't know if it's just they're not used to it. They're not used to working with them. But sometimes I also wonder if it's care and handling because, like what you have in your hand, the beehive. Yeah, it's like I know those by maracas, beehives, and shampoo ginger. So is there an official name so you refer to them as beehives?
Yeah, beehives is kind of a universal name that encompasses all of that. Abapuhi is the shampoo ginger. Yeah, they're all related, but
Okay.
beehives is generally the common name people use.
Sure. And so when you cut those, I mean, this is what's so crazy. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around this a little bit because like you're just cutting them and you're going to get the maximum shelf life on a flower like that. And so are your clients because they're freshly harvested. Those of us who have to pull them out of a box and deal with them. I'm kind of curious if you have any tips on some of these tropicals and maybe some care and handling that you found works. I know it's funny. I've seen videos where you guys are washing them off and doing different things. And I learned something the other day. I'll let you, maybe you can elaborate, like where those little flowers are on the ginger depends on how old the flower is.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't know that till just the other day.
Yeah. So like this specific ginger. Yeah. Well, first, as a farmer, and if I'm gonna cut some flowers for a client, whether I'm gonna make an arrangement or maybe sell some cut flowers, what you want to do with tropicals is you want to water heavy, like a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days prior,
Okay,
because
wait
that
one
is
second.
gonna
Wait,
be.
okay, when you turn this way, for some reason your audio went away. I don't know what happened.
Mm.
So when you're facing the camera, it's like I don't know if the ear pods change in direction, but anyway. So if you can start over with when you go to cut, or I think that's what you started off with. Sorry.
With what?
Just start over.
Okay. Okay. So as a farmer's approach to cutting flowers for a client, maybe like for an arrangement or loose flowers for longevity, you want to water heavy a day, 2 days, sometimes 3 days prior, because with tropicals, that's going to extend the life the most.
Mm.
So, but when you're in, let's say, a co-op, Cola Farmers is a flower co-op, gets flowers from, or if you're at Bella Rosa or any wholesale company, you want to, like the beehives, like you mentioned, is if the flowers are coming out closer to the top, it's an older flower, the longevity is going to be a little less. And then with torch gingers, there's a lot of sepals that come out, and the flower is actually really small compared to the flower structure, kind of like a beehive. When you start getting rings of flowers, that's a sign that you're going to have less longevity. Look at the edges of your heliconias. If you see some browning on the tips, that's also a sign of an older flower, or maybe it was abused a little bit. It was kind of out of water for a while. So those are some of the few things that you can do. Those are the main things really that you can look out for.
Okay. Do you find like submersing flowers? I mean, again, you don't have to do this because you're like you said, you're hydrating them, and maybe this is not a fair question, but those of us who can't do that, if we're pulling them out of a box, I've seen where people will soak anthuriums or just, and a lot of them will spray things with to seal in the moisture and stuff like that. Again, you don't have to do that, but I mean, would you recommend anything like that to help extend the life of them?
Yeah, this only really relates to loose flowers that you're gonna use. Cutting them underwater is something you can do. That's been proven to help, you know, extend the life of it, and that's because when you cut it, out of water, it gets oxidized, and so it can't absorb as much water. So if you cut it underwater, then you can extend the life that way. Um, with anthuriums, you said it. If you soak them, which we do when we ever get any anthurium shipped to us, we soak it for 15 minutes, maybe even half a day sometimes,
Oh,
and
really?
then we give it a fresh recut. Yeah,
Not ginger and heliconia.
but not gingers and heliconias. They don't seem to do much difference when you soak them. And I've actually did an experiment with them. I put a ginger and a heliconia in water. I put some dye, and I wanted to see how fast the dye went up into the flower.
Hmm.
Gingers got a little more dye to their leaves faster. Heliconias not so much. So that again kind of proves that it's all about pre-watering with your tropicals, with your heliconias and gingers.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Fascinating. That's
but
really cool.
yeah.
Huh. Well, when this is another thing with producing flowers and tropicals, especially, how do you come to a price? How do you figure out your cost of growing flowers and costing them out as you kind of sell them?
I have like a little wheel and I just spin it.
Yeah, kind of. Um, we're not very good at that, I'll be honest.
Okay.
We just since we just deal directly to client, we do more of like retail pricing for all of our cut stems.
Sure.
And we do just kind of your standard 3 to 5 times markup for our arrangements or weddings and events. That's what we used to do. So now we're kind of getting away from that standard markup. For the last like couple years, we would do that for our arrangements. And we've only been in the business now for about 4 years, and maybe 3 years in weddings and events. The first year was just farmers markets. And so it was all an experiment. And every time we were doing something, our arrangements were kind of evolving and changing and getting bigger. And so we started doing, obviously, pricing out our stems and counting and our markup, mainly to see what we really put into our arrangements. Because
Sure.
I think every florist kind of has their standard go-tos for certain different sizes. So I started really kind of taking note of everything, and we got better about doing our recipes, but also more so we would make things and then I would write it down and calculate it after to really understand what we're doing. And I know for me, for sure, I found that doing that, just a standard, your 3 or 4 times markup, was challenging because I would stop putting something into an arrangement because I hit my budget, I hit my quota,
Right.
and I wasn't happy with it. And Danny, on the other hand, just kind of kept going and making things really, really big. And then I would get really frustrated because he was going over budget and I was being really anal with the budget. We were on very different wavelengths. So what we're trying to do going forward is to let that go a little bit from our heads and come up with more of just standard pricing for sizes based on the size and how much, give or take, how many flowers we typically put in and the amount of time that it takes, really. And we found that allows us to be more creative and not have to think about, cutting a couple dollars here and there to fit the budget, just be more creative. And we learned that from another floral educator, where sometimes you'll lose out a little bit and sometimes you'll do better. But in the end, it kind of all evens out, and it just allows us to let the creative process flow and be happier with the product that we are given rather than just look at the dollar sign.
No, and I can appreciate that, because then also your clients are going to see uniformity. Like when they order the medium size arrangement, it's going to be consistent. And that's the part that's hard for me, is especially working with tropicals. Like people, might think that beehive ginger has one perceived value, but then this big hanging heliconia has another perceived value. And for you guys, you might, do your hanging heliconias, do they produce 5 stems a year or 500 stems a year, and then figuring a cost for that? And it's kind of like, well, if we don't use them, then they're kind of going to go to waste. Or if we sell them to a florist or sell them, to a hotel or to another wholesaler, there's these other ways you could move them. But, you, at the same time, I get it. You don't want to have one arrangement going out that's 3 feet high and one going out that's 18 inches high, and then it's the same price. It's because then it's kind of like people don't understand that. Yeah,
exactly. And that was something we kind of found, is doing some of our big statement arrangements with hanging heliconias, and there might only be 4 stems in there, but they're big, they're dramatic, and they take a lot of time for us to place them and get them placed perfectly. Sometimes less flowers is not faster because they have to be put in the exact perfect spot. And you could have something that's very, very small with a lot of flowers that you just stuff in there really quick and it's the same price. So that was kind of where we decided that for us, it wasn't making sense to do that way.
Right. And then do you find that you, like when you have less flowers, you compensate? You guys must have a ton of different foliages. That's the thing I think I'm also fascinated by, is just, I don't know. Sometimes I think just doing arrangements with nothing but greenery is really cool. Is when you have these different textures and variegations and colors and things like that. And, it must be nice just to walk out to a candy store every day and just now in season just to pick from. I I was one. I had a question and it left me. Dadgummit. This is when we edit.
It's okay.
Well, speaking back towards the previous question, I am guilty as charged. Sometimes I'll make a 3-foot arrangement and a 1-foot arrangement, but we've gotten better at just letting like our subscription clients know, like, hey, if we have the flowers, we're gonna make your arrangement bigger, because I don't want them to go to waste, and I want you guys to enjoy them. So as long as they know that, this is more than what they got, I think it's okay. But it can, it's a double-edged sword, like you're saying. If you are inconsistent, they might, not like that. So
Right, because the next week
so
when it's normal, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, this seems a lot
Yeah,
smaller.
it's small.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
I'm guilty with that. I'll make it one size, and then when Leandra's not looking, I'll stuff a couple
Oh,
extra
all
ones
the
in there.
time. I come back and I say, "What is that?" He's like, "Well, we had extra flowers." I was like, "Yeah, but it's twice as big as last week's."
Sure.
I just
Well,
can't help it. I'll get to a point where it's not complete, and I want to complete it, and that's more important to me than like making it worth like whatever price range you're at. But I have a really hard time with that for sure.
sure. Well, I can
But I
appreciate
think
that.
yeah, and I think it is a little bit different just because, like you said, it is stuff from our farm. So while yes, there is a lot of labor and time that goes into it, it's not like we're going down to the market and putting dollars out of our pocket into this. It's things that we have that aren't going to get used otherwise. It's not something that I would recommend to a new starting florist that's going down to the wholesaler and buying bunches
Right.
of flowers. I think in that case you should be more mathematical and really do your calculations a little bit more. For us, it's we have it and it's going to waste and it's going to be extra. So do what we want to do that makes us and the clients happy, for sure.
Right. Right. I mean, and sometimes with those extras, and we haven't talked about this in a long time, it's kind of fun to maybe do some designs and take to a local business or hotel or somewhere and say, hey, this is what we do. I don't know if you're interested in weekly flowers, or maybe you don't do weekly flowers, but at least for them to think of you if they don't know of you. It's another way to kind of help market your business with those extra flowers. And I don't know. I think what you guys create is amazing. One thing I wanted to ask about the torch ginger, which is one of the flowers you guys seem to use a lot of. We don't get them as much. We get and I'm so ignorant with some of this stuff. The traditional ginger, what I think of, which I always thought was a torch ginger, but the kind that you're talking about is that round one that almost has like a flower face to it on top. You guys have a lot of colors of that, I think. And how like growing that and designing with that, I was always a little nervous about them, and maybe that's just because when they come out of the box they're not as fabulous, but maybe tell us a little bit about care and handling for that, or do you guys even I feel like I've seen you guys reflex some of the petals or leaves or something like that, and some care and handling on that. I don't know. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, the torch ginger is one of our favorites. I mean, I think it might be my favorite over the beehive. And I put a lot of focus into that over these past 3 years. I've been sprouting them all from seed. And it
Wow.
takes from seed to flower, it takes 3 years. You're in it for the long haul. Yeah.
The commitment.
And I grew up here. I grew up in Waihole. I grew up with some other farmers, some very close farmer family friends. And so I was able to get some different varieties from them. And I've been just collecting them, and I've been trying to breed them. And I've had a couple times from seed where I got variegated leaves, pure white, variegated green and yellow. And I was very excited, but I couldn't keep them alive. They were a little weak. But yeah, we do have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 different colors of torch gingers.
Wow.
And you can reflex the leaves. There's different stages in them, and they're used all for different things. Maybe like a tighter stage you'll use in a bouquet. More of an open stage you'll use in some kind of install or large piece. You can reflex the flowers. They tend to wrap around the center kind of tightly. So you got to be very careful because as you're pulling them off, you can rip the leaf or bruise them. So unless it's already starting to loosen up, I wouldn't recommend pulling it apart because you might just
Yeah,
ruin it.
break it. Yeah.
As far as packing them, we've never sent them outer island or anything like that.
We never ordered any.
We've never ordered any.
I've never seen how somebody would package a torch ginger.
Yeah, if we need to supplement what we have from another farm, then I'll take a bucket and I put filled up with pipes, and so they all stand straight. PVC pipes, and that keeps them upright. They're not leaning on top of each other. So that's something that I do, and maybe like if some other farmer, is looking for advice or little hints, that's something you can do. Or if you lay them down, it's kind of good to keep the head off the ground. So maybe you can put like a piece of wood or something so the head kind of stays off the ground and the bracts or the sepals are not rubbing, because they are very fragile. They will break, especially the white torch ginger. They bruise the easiest.
They bruise so easy.
What else with them?
Yeah, I don't honestly not sure how somebody, I'm curious to know how you guys receive them. How are they packed?
Well, a lot of times they put a lot of either shredded paper or things like that, but they cut them tighter. So where those first leaves, they don't really open up very much. They tend to be very tight to the flower. And that's where I'm like, I mean, I'm just going to be real here. When I see this flower, I'm like, okay, it's okay. It doesn't ooh and ah me. When I see yours, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I'm like, why don't mine never look like that? And I mean, but just like so many local flowers, you can cut them at the right stage because they're not having to go in a box and be shipped. I think of like cafe au lait dahlias and some of these other things, they just don't do well in a box. They're not box friendly. And I think the open torch ginger is the same way. But I do have I have a friend, and I'm going to try this a little more, and I may devote some time to it and see if I can crack the code on it, because I just think I had no idea the amazing flowers that there were. I did want to ask, well, in such an amazing place like you guys have, I mean, obviously sustainable floristry with mechanics and things is a thing. And I don't know what your approach is to that, but I feel like sometimes tropicals are really hard to do with little or no foam because they're so heavy. And I'm just curious how you guys approach your design mechanics.
So we definitely are aiming towards, being as sustainable as possible. When we do any type of vase arrangement, we never use foam. We use chicken wire and we use frog pins. And we found that it's by choice because we don't want to be using all of this floral foam. It also makes it, in my opinion, a little bit easier because I can move things around and I'm not stuck with stuff. I very much, and Danny's the same way. We put something in, we take it out, we move it. And so we're happy with it. And the same goes with installations. We mostly use chicken wire, but it's really dependent on our time because it's just the sometimes we hire a couple freelancers here and there for bigger weddings and events, but we don't really have any freelancers in our roster as of right now that we feel comfortable with them really designing for us. So it's just the two of us on day of. And if we don't have the time, if we have the time, we prefer to just do chicken wire on an arch and do everything there. Sometimes we need to use some extra mechanics like, what's the word I'm looking for? Zip ties, things to secure it into place to hold it. And if we need to do something, say a couple of days ahead of time, because we just know we're not going to have the time on the day of, or it's a really short setup window and we need to preset it, then we'll use some floral foam sometimes, but really just for like the installations when we don't feel like we have another option.
Sure.
And same with like doing installations. I think the thing with tropicals, what we've found is, yes, the floral foam helps it stay in, but also tropicals have such big stems that they create such a big hole in your foam that it can be really challenging because you're stuck with it. You have this really large hole sometimes. You can't move it. It's not like a rope stem, but that's what we found, I think.
Yeah, you can strip the stem down to make it thinner. When you use the wire, like when I'm kind of bunching it up, maybe I'm putting it in a vase, I try to make layers. So when the stem goes in, there's multiple catch points on it, and that kind of really stabilizes the larger heliconias or ginger stems. Yeah.
Well,
and then also I know.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I know that there are a lot of different alternatives coming out now for floral foam. We have a hard time getting them on island, or the shipping is very expensive.
Sure.
That it doesn't make any sense. I think the last I looked, I haven't looked in a while, like the ocean pouch wasn't shipping here. I couldn't find a supplier that would ship it to us, so we haven't tried working with that yet. Agro wool I was able to get from somebody, but I think with the shipping and everything, one brick came out to like, it was almost $15 or $20. It was because of the shipping, it was a lot. So I'm hoping that as these alternatives continue to come out, that they're going to be a little bit more accessible to us here on island, because we would love to kind of experiment with those a little bit more.
Sure. Well, and I think too, just the nature of tropicals themselves. I mean, so many times, like you said, especially when they're well hydrated, I mean, they'll last out of water in chicken wire probably all day. I mean, it depends on how hot it is, I guess. But I mean, what's the longest those flowers last out of water?
Depends on how hot the day is.
Yeah,
that's a big one for us. They could last all day.
Yeah, depending on the variety too. I mean, I've stuck like a red carabia, is a type of heliconia, inside of just a dry pipe, and it lasted like a week before it started getting really ugly. So I mean, but again, it was during a time where it wasn't real hot. It was kind of more towards the cooler season. So they can last, but you just don't know, and that would be terrible. I would feel so bad if left an event and they just turned black.
That's something we've found.
So, yeah, we normally we'll be spraying the flower throughout the whole entire event, right into the last minute, and then we'll leave, and then the wedding will start. So we try to keep them water as much as we can when they're just in chicken wire and out of water.
And we have found at some events, just especially in the summer months here, because it does get so hot. And if a client has a clear top tent, which are our nemesis, and you're setting up at 2 p.m, like Danny said, we do mist them. Say we're doing an installation or a hanging piece with big monstera leaves, and they literally, you watch them turn black. Like they just have these black spots on them, and they just get singed from the sun and the heat, like they're getting baked in an oven. And it wouldn't matter if the stem was in water or not so much. I mean, it would definitely help, but sometimes the weather's just not on our side.
Yeah, well, I understand. Well, and I've done weddings on scaffolding in those clear tents, and it's like putting a magnifying glass on things. It just cooks them. I mean, it's just crazy kind of what it does.
It's crazy.
It is insane. I remember I was at one wedding, and it was a clear top tent, and it was doing this really big hanging piece, and we knew the bride, she was awesome, and I was just so hot. I was just stripping down as I was going through the thing. I was in almost my underwear at the end of it.
No, he wasn't, but he was shirtless.
That's funny. Now, when you say you're spraying these flowers, is it just water, or is there any preservative that you use?
We only spray with water for now. If there's something better, let us know. By all means. I mean, sometimes it's so hot, I feel so bad for the flowers and greens. Maybe I'll spray some beer on them, and no, hey, this is going to be a hard time, buddy. You need to suck it up.
That's right. I love that, huh? Yeah, that may be the miracle elixir right there. I know. Well, I know there's some products out there that, in fact, one I remember when I first got into the business over 30 years ago called Hawaiian Mist. And it's kind of like it's a paraffin based product that it seals the flower, but being paraffin also makes me feel like it's a petroleum product. And because of that, I kind of don't feel good about composting or anything, what you do with the flowers afterwards. And so that's why I don't know. I hate to mention it, but I know that's one of the things that a lot of times people use, especially when they're doing hotels and things where these flowers, they want them to last a week or more. These 7-day sets. So
Yeah, I think we've never experimented with any of those kinds of sprays. People have asked us before, and we've never felt the need to. I think our flowers do last so long. Usually 7 to 10 days is what we tell our clients on average. Sometimes up to 2 weeks. So we've never felt the need, I guess, to do that. And
I mean, why would you?
Yes, if you got a really happy, healthy flower to begin with, you're good.
Sure,
And clean your
absolutely.
water. Keep your water clean.
Absolutely.
You should be okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as always at the end of our episodes, we love to ask these advice questions, and you guys have such a unique experience and product and business model. I'd love to hear what you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Ooh, so
first, yeah, a little short.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, we each have one. We have our own advice.
Yay.
Well, just know we were talking about it earlier, and it kind of just came to me, and it was, I would say, some advice to brides that really want that heavy tropical look, and they want, certain flowers. I would say if the flowers are your most important things, and you're getting married in Hawaii, try to plan your wedding around the season that all the flowers are coming up. And that will be very helpful for the florist and the outcome for, what they're looking for. And I guess my next thing is for anybody that's starting off in floristry, is just stay open. Never get stuck on one look. Stay curious. I look back on things that I made and I was like, that's different.
I love that.
And that was just where I was at that time. And that's just what I liked, and that's what other people like at the moment. And now I'm different, and I might go back to that as well. So just be open, be curious, and I'll just let your creativity flow.
I like that. Mine is kind of a play on that. I would say whether you are trying to farm flowers or looking into floristry, is don't fight Mother Nature. If you are growing flowers, you're trying to, whether it's in your own home or you're farming them, put them in places that are happy. I mean, we all do it all the time, and something doesn't survive, it dies. Try it in a new place until it's happy, and just don't try and fight it so much. And same with floristry. If you are working and creating something for a client or yourself, work with what's in season, work with what's available. You're going to get the best product because you're going to get the freshest. It's kind of like your food. You go to the grocery store and you pick what looks the best because that's what's growing that season. Right. And it tastes the best. So same with flowers, just don't fight it so much. Be flexible, like we spoke about earlier. And Mother Nature will always show you the best way because she knows best. She knows better than all of us.
That's totally for sure. I want this. I'm gonna break rhythm here a minute. So recently, it looked like you guys had a little getaway, and
yes.
Which I think is amazing. When you live in Hawaii and you go to a place that is full of amazing gardens, does that inspire you still? Do you walk away with that same sense of awe? Because I feel like when you live in a place like that, you kind of are surrounded by it. What was that inspirational for you guys at all, or just more R&R?
That was very inspirational for me. Like, I like to do landscaping, so I had a great time looking at all the different plants and how they design them, maybe looking at their color combinations or or maybe critiquing them. Oh, I would have done this. Maybe this would be a better look. So I,
I love
I
that.
think I'm always doing that wherever I go, and I try to see the beauty in everything. There's I mean, if you go around and you're like, well, that looks bad and that looks bad, and you're looking at all the negative things, then that's just no fun, you know.
No,
That's just you're gonna have a negative outlook on everything. So yeah, we are surrounded by beauty everywhere we go, but I mean, for one, that place is beautiful, but everything's a little different. There's always something we haven't seen before, and I like to go and sniff it out.
And different microclimates too. Hawaii is very unique that all the different islands have such different microclimates that are, well, it's all tropical. They're very different, and different plants grow that, a different part of the island here that we can't grow here. And so that's always fun to see the environment that something's thriving in, and to see if it's something that would work at our place, or just appreciate it for where it is and know that we're
sure,
never going to be able to to bring it up here.
sure. Well, you two, I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much. I know I'm more inspired to work with tropicals, and I hope our listeners are too. I hope they all follow you guys, and be sure to go to our website to get all the details on these two amazing people and their business. And thank you for being on the Flower Podcast.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having us. We
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. We love sharing this, and we're just kind of really stoked to see this, tropicals kind of make a comeback, modern
Yeah.
tropical, change it up a little bit and get people excited about it because they're really fun to work with.
I love that. Modern tropicals. Here we go. I love that.
Yes.